We've added a per object radius attribute to our particle shape node. That gives us the ability to change the size of the particles, but as you can see, they're all the same size. If I want each particle to be a different size, then I'll need to add a per particle attribute. And those are found a little bit lower in the attribute editor panel. You'll see per particle array attributes. The one that we need is called radius pp, or radius per particle. It's not shown here in the default list. A particle system node actually has a lot of dormant attributes that we can turn on and off at will, and this is one of them, radius pp. To activate it, I'll click in the Add Dynamic Attributes section, the General button, and in the Add Attribute window, I want to choose the Particle tab, and I'm looking for radius pp, so I'll scroll down, radius pp, and click OK. Now it should appear in the attribute editor now, radius pp. If you don't see it, you might just click on one of the other tabs in the attribute editor and then go back to the particle shape node. And that should refresh the display so that your new radius pp attribute will show up. The next thing we want to do is put some input into this field. Currently it's blank. We're going to add an expression to drive the radius so that each particle will have a random size. So I'm going to add a creation expression, and that is a simple line of MEL code, Maya Embedded Language script code. That's a small line of code. It's going to be evaluated at the beginning of the simulation each time it plays. To add it, I'm going to right-click in this empty field next to radius pp, and in the pop-up window, I'll choose Creation Expression. This opens up the expression editor. And in the expression editor, you will see that the currently selected node and attribute are highlighted. And below that, you will see the selected object and attribute listed in the standard MEL syntax with the object name, a dot, and then the attribute name. We want to set this equal to something, and we'll do that down here in the expression area. So I could type that in, but in fact I can just select it with my mouse and then middle mouse drag it down into that expression area. I can make it larger by holding down the Control key and turning the mouse wheel. Okay, so I want to set particle shape1.radius pp equal to something. So I'll put an equal sign. And this is going to be a random function. So this is a pre-programmed function in MEL, RAND. The random function needs some input. We need to give it the minimum and maximum values for our random range. And those will be enclosed in parentheses. So I'll put an open parenthesis, and then my minimum value for the radius, let's give it a 0.5, a comma to separate it from the maximum value, and then the maximum value, which will be 2. I'll put a close parenthesis, and then I'm going to add a semicolon onto the end to indicate that's the end of the line of code. You notice in my case I have no spaces anywhere. It is okay for you to put spaces around the equal sign, but that's the only place you can put them in this expression. You'll also notice that it's case sensitive. An uppercase S is different from a lowercase s. Once I've typed this in exactly the way that I want to click the Create button, and then at the bottom of the main Maya interface in the script editor response area, I should see simply result and then the name of my particle shape node. If you see a syntax error or something, you may need to go back up into your expression editor and make changes, and then click the Edit button to take those changes. Before we look at the results of this, I want to mention that it's very easy to lose your expression. Just all you have to do is just click on anything and you will lose that expression window. So this happens very commonly. To get it back, what you need to do is select your particles, go to the attribute editor, go back to the per particle array attributes, and once again right-click in that field and choose Creation Expression. And then you can go back and make whatever changes you need. I'm going to drag this off to the side now. I'll rewind, play back my simulation, and now you'll see we've got different sized particles. Now if you watch this closely, you might notice that the pattern of radius is not the same every time. Every time the simulation plays back, those particles will be differently sized. And that's because this creation expression is evaluated every time the simulation begins at frame 1. What we need to have happen here is we need to control this expression so that we will get the same random result each time the simulation plays back. In fact, in computers, there's no real randomness. There's only pseudo-randomness. And we can choose between different strings of pseudo-random numbers. And the way to do that is to seed the random function so that you'll get a repeatable pseudo-random result every time the simulation is played. Back in my expression editor, I'm going to add a line above the current line. So I'll position my cursor and press the Enter key. I'll go up to that line and I want to put in the seed function. It needs to accept an input as well, which will start with a parenthesis. And what I want to seed this with is actually the ID number of each particle. In other words, every particle has a unique number that identifies it, and I'm going to utilize that number to drive the seed function. So I'm going to copy-paste the name of the node. I'll just hit Control-C and then Control-V to paste that in. And then the name of the attribute I want to access here is particle ID, P-A-R-T-I-C-L-E, and then a capital I and a lowercase d. I can close that with a close parenthesis and then finish the line by adding a semicolon. So here it is, we're seeding the random function with the particle ID. And if I click Edit, Rewind, and play back my simulation, I'll get the same random pattern of particle radius every time it plays back. So it's a consistent pseudo-random result. If you want a different pattern, then you can simply add or multiply some arbitrary value to the particle ID. For example, I could use the multiplication symbol, which is the asterisk or star, and then just put in some arbitrary made-up number and click Edit, and now I'll get a different repeatable random result than I did before. So to change the pattern, I'll just put in a different value. And so that's how we can randomize the radius of our particles and ensure the same pattern of random-sized particles using the seed function. Now that we have a working particle creation expression, let's save our scene with File, Save Scene As, and I'm up to particles wand 04.ma.